Coming up on episode 189 of Wheel Bearings, we're driving the 2021 Acura NSX, Volkswagen Atlas Sport, and Ford Mustang Mach-E. We talk about buying Teslas with Bitcoin, Jeep Trailhead EV chargers, and Rivian's move to set up its own charging network. We finish it up with some questions, and that's all ahead on episode 189 of Wheel Bearings.
Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. We've updated the Wheel Bearings merch store, and now there's a whole bunch of new choices, new colors, new styles, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, travel mugs, stickers, aprons, tote bags, you name it. You can get your Wheel Bearings merch at shop.wheelbearings.media. Go check it out. That's shop.wheelbearings.media.
This is Wheel Bearings. I am Dan Roth from Forbes.
I'm Sam Abul-Samad from Guidehouse Insights.
And I am Nicole Wakelin from a whole bunch of different places.
What's your favorite? Probably can't pick favorites, right?
Favorite? Yeah. Then everyone else is going to fire me, right?
Get you in trouble.
What's okay? I'll just say the first one that came to mind: car expert. How's that?
Okay.
Perfect.
All right.
I'll say like a different one every week.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. You can get them in a bidding war. Be like, look, you get first bill
right.
on the. There you go.
Like, who will give me $5 to say your name first?
Exactly. We'll sell the naming rights for the show.
Right. We've had some new Patreon supporters sign up, so I wanted to say thanks to Ronald Richmond, Chintan Amin, Marcos Bello, and Tristan Ollie. Thanks everybody so much for your support of Wheel Bearings. It helps us build out some content that is underway. It's coming. We've got some writer auditions going on right now, so stay tuned. There's more to come, and we appreciate your support. And so if you haven't caught up to last week's episode or you missed the little snippet in the middle, Nicole, you are our newest co-host on Wheel Bearings.
Yes, I am. Since Rebecca left and I actually helped her relocate all the way across the country, I'm going to take her place, or I'm going to try to anyway. So, yeah. So thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is kind of fun.
We're
glad to have you.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you. I'm surprised you made it back in one piece so quickly. That's impressive. Maybe there's a story there from the relocation, but why don't we give you top billing? What have you been driving around since you landed?
I'm in a totally boring car that nobody notices, and not a single person has stopped to take pictures of me in traffic.
It happens,
especially in that color.
Yeah,
that color just blends into the background.
Yeah,
it happens to all of us.
I am in a, what do they call it? Indie Yellow Pearl, I believe is the color, 2021 Acura NSX.
That's really dull. I'm sorry. Maybe next week we can get you in a nice Camry.
Those boring hybrids. I mean, who wants those?
Right? It's like totally dull. I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'll drive it if I have to. And
it's only got 2 seats. I mean, what are you going to do?
Only got 2 seats. What am I supposed to do with that? Literally, I was taking things or trying to go someplace, and I have a teenage daughter. I'm like, well, you can drive and meet us, right? Because I want to take the NSX. So, yeah. That is what I am driving, and it is a hoot to drive that thing. I love that car.
Is this the first time you've had an NSX?
I drove an NSX for a hot minute at an event a couple of years ago, and literally it was like this horrible heavy traffic. So it's like drive 10 minutes that way, but you're only going to go 5 miles an hour and then come 10 minutes back in the same traffic.
Oh, what a waste.
So technically second time, but yeah, total waste the first time.
Well, I don't know. It's not necessarily a waste. Driving a supercar like that in traffic at least lets you know how it behaves. They're classically finicky, and they hate to go slow in traffic. So
they don't like slow.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not cars that like slow. Even just like driving around town when there's a stoplight, you just have to slow down too many times. It's like, stop this. Yeah. Find a highway woman. I'm like, okay, hold on, I'm working on it.
Compared to other, high performance sports cars, how would you say the NSX fares?
Okay. I don't, and I know, Dan, I think you had the NSX already, right? No, you didn't. Oh, for some reason I thought you had. No. I was under the same impression you had. Was it you, Sam? No?
I had it for a long weekend a couple of years ago, and I also had a couple of short periods with it. I drove it at Mile and Dragway. They were doing a demo event with their launch control system. So.
Got it. Cars like this, these sort of supercars, they're always a little, generally speaking, they're great and they're fast and you feel the power and you hear the power and they sound fantastic. But they can be sort of a pain in the neck to drive for too long. Like they're very harsh. They aren't nice to just cruise in. The speed is cool, but the ride itself isn't. This is fantastic. Like this is truly one of my favorite cars in this sort of range, price, performance car category, because it is just, it takes all the best parts of being this powerful, loud, almost obnoxiously glaring, thing driving down the road, but also being something that you like driving. You're not so squished that you feel like you can't move your arms. You don't feel like your knees are hitting the sides. I really liked this weekend. Like I'm loath to give this up on Monday. I'm probably going to get the most boring, tame car ever. And it's going to feel like I've been knocked right off my perch. But I really have enjoyed driving the NSX. It's been a lot of fun.
That's the thing about the NSX. When the first one came out in 1990, it transformed the expectations that people had for these, back in those days, we called exotics. Nobody was calling them hypercars or supercars then. They were exotics. At the time, you had stuff like Ferraris and Lamborghinis. And as you said, Dan, they were always kind of finicky to drive. They weren't any fun to drive in the city for sure. And the original NSX totally changed the expectation that people had for these kinds of cars by making it fast, but also very civilized. The one time I had an opportunity to drive an original NSX, I got in, it feels like an Accord.
Well, that was the thing.
It's like a really fast Accord.
And that's exactly what it was. It was really the first car of that type capable of that kind of performance that just worked like an Accord. It was that kind of reliable and easy in any conditions and that kind of quality that you'd expect. If you look back at a Ferrari of the time, like what would be a contemporary Ferrari, like a 348?
Probably a 348 at that time, I think.
Very hand-built. Which it can be quaint and it's interesting to look at, but when you spend that kind of money on it and then you compare it to the NSX that cost like $60,000 at the time, there was really no comparison. The NSX was built much better. So that kind of build quality and ease of use and reliability, you have the original NSX to thank for the Ferraris and Lamborghinis that we have now.
Yeah, it really was striking because as excited as I was to drive this, I was thinking about what you were saying, Dan. It's going to be this finicky thing. I'm going to have fun putting it on the highway, but it's going to be sort of trying to drive it almost as a daily driver for a long weekend for 4 days. And I haven't found that at all. Like to a shocking degree, I thought if you, close your eyes, didn't know what you were sitting in, it feels just like you could be riding in the Accord. It feels a very comfortable, very smooth ride. Only when you really mash the gas, suddenly the sound of it and the feel of it and the way it throws you back in your seat, you're like, oh wait, not in the Accord, But it's an unbelievably comfortable car. The only thing that is a challenge, I think, and you get this with anything like this. My husband is 6'3", and I couldn't stop laughing every time he got in the passenger side because it was a sort of like pretzel folding situation. He's like, how do you get in and out of this? I'm like, just like that, honey. That's all you got. Because he can fit in there, but he has zero room once he's in. But getting in and out because it's so low when you're a taller guy is a little bit of a challenge. But that's any car that's low like that.
Yeah, see, the trick is just don't grow so tall.
I know. I told him you just need to shrink a few inches. Like 6'3" is too much for the NSX, just maybe 6 foot.
Well, luckily with buyer demographics, by the time you can afford one of these, osteoporosis is kind of set in and you've shrunk a little bit, maybe?
Right. It'll shrink enough to fit by the time we can afford to buy this.
That's horrible.
And I had one other really stupid complaint. Ready for my stupid complaint? Everyone can get mad at me. There are no cup holders. I wanted a coffee. I stopped and I got my favorite little drink at Starbucks, my little London Fog latte, and I went to put in the cup holder and there isn't one. So my husband was my cup holder. But so you have nowhere to put a drink. They're literally, I get that there's zero storage. I can fit like your phone in this tiny little pod behind you, but there's nowhere to put a drink.
Yeah. It's maybe a message about its purpose-built nature, but it seems like even people who drive cars like that would like to drive with a coffee or a water or something.
Right. On occasion, even when you're screaming along in your hypercar, supercar, exotic, whatever you want to call it, you might like a warm beverage or a cool beverage to make the drive that much better. And you can do that, but you either hold it in hand, have someone with you, or wedge it between your knees. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's what I was going to say. It could be like it was in the 80s or with my first cars, where I would find, where can I jam this cup? Can I put it between the seat and the parking brake lever, which is not a thing modern cars have, or can it go between the seat and the door? But it's inviting disaster, especially if you have the cup, like if you do the common, like I'll just stick it in my lap, and then you need to step on the brake real quick, and you crush the cup, and it's hot coffee. Yep. That's
been there, done that.
I had the things that used to be able to hang on, like I had a little clip that went in the window and then hung in the window, which is great until you forgot you had it there, and for some reason you put your window down or something, and it's like, and then your whole coffee is like ready to fall out. Or again, the short stop would send that entire thing dumping into your lap. It was awesome.
You can go to the marine supply store. On our boat when I was a kid, we had these things called gym buoys, and they were little. It's like a little bracket, and so you can just screw that right to the dashboard, and then it's a little gimbal mount for a drink. So it's like a C-shaped bracket that goes into that gimbal, and then it's got swivels on a little basket, and so you put your drink in there, and it'll compensate for the motion of the waves.
So,
it's just
as cool as that sounds, I don't think I could screw anything into the dashboard of my $157,500.
It's not yours.
NSX.
See, that's the thing. It's not yours.
I'll just do this accurate. They're going to be like, "What do you do?" Nothing. I wanted them to have a place for their drinks.
Well, what we do on film shoots is we just fill the holes in the wall with toothpaste.
Just fill it in.
There are far more famous car reviewers out there who have done far worse damage to very expensive cars. So, I think that, accurate.
Okay, so when I do that, try that later. I'll let Chris at Acura know. Like the guy said, totally do this.
They said it was okay, right?
You can tell Chris that I told you. Yeah, Chris. Okay. Chris will come find me.
Dan said so.
So let me ask you this: have you driven the C8 Corvette?
Yes.
So you mentioned the price of the NSX, starting like $157,000.
Yeah.
I think this is the challenge that Acura and a lot of other supercar makers have now, is you've got this Corvette that starts at $60,000. How do you, how would you rate the NSX versus the Vet?
You know what? It's really hard because I think two things happen. Yeah, there's a huge price jump between the Vet and the NSX. So there's two things. Not that you see a Corvette on every corner, but you sure see them on a heck of a lot more corners than you see the NSX. So there's a certain exclusivity, that you're paying for. It makes it, you're paying more, but you are getting something that's cooler in the idea that nobody knows what the heck you're driving until they swivel their head around to see it. So the rarity of this makes it sort of more interesting, more fun, if that's your boat. Also, I definitely liked driving the NSX more than the Corvette. I love the Corvette, but there are things that are much more drivable in the NSX. Now, is it, $100,000 more drivable in the Corvette? That's a lot. But I think it's sort of appealing to a different person, that somebody who really wants the supercar experience, but wants an element of exclusivity. Like I said, you see a lot of Corvettes because they are more affordable. You see a lot more of them. You drive an NSX, you're probably the only one in town who drives one.
It's not necessarily that you get $100,000 more performance either. The Corvette has generally always been really competitive performance-wise for the money. So the things that you get when you buy a different car are that exclusivity. Certainly some of the things that Chevrolet has to do to make the Corvette $60,000 or $70,000, Acura doesn't have to do when their car is twice that. So that's the idea that you're not seeing yourself everywhere. Like all of those things, I think, are the inherent value in that, or some of the other even more exotic cars there. Although the NSX is pretty rare. I think you'll probably see an Italian exotic more often than you'd see an NSX.
I know that I've never. I'm in New Hampshire. We don't have a lot of exotic cars anyway. But we see Corvettes. There's someone in town who has a McLaren. We see some Lamborghinis. I've literally never seen an NSX anywhere.
Well, Acura they only sell about 500 or 600 NSXs a year globally. And in fact, they just announced that they were ending sales of the NSX in Japan because sales were so low. I think they had sold about 70 or so over the last 2.5 years. By comparison, Chevrolet builds about 500 Corvettes a week. Acura builds 500 a year. So
why do you think the NSX did so poorly in Japan?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Certainly, for the Japanese roads, it's relatively large. It's expensive. I don't think that in general, I don't think a lot of these really high performance cars sell from any brand in Japan.
Good point. So
something about the NSX, for whatever reason, it's just never really caught the public's attention since the new generation NSX came out. Despite its success in racing, I think it's a fabulous looking car. It certainly drives great. Just something about it. It just has not caught attention the way even a relative newcomer like McLaren has. McLaren sells a lot more cars just in the US than Acura sells NSXs globally.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's just part of the idea being that like McLaren, everyone you get is this fancy, expensive car. Acura, you can buy an affordable Acura that regular humans can buy. So people don't necessarily. Yeah, you can buy one that like people can afford. So people think of it as like sort of a luxury brand, but it's one you have a chance of buying someday. So to have a car in there that might not be the one that you can ever buy, people just don't even think of that with the brand, Yeah,
I wonder if that's part of it. I think part of the original NSX too was that it offered that quality and performance for Corvette money. It wasn't really much more expensive than a Corvette. Now it's a lot more expensive than a Corvette. So it's a different thing now. And this car took a long time to get to us. I remember we were waiting for the new NSX for a while, and
I sat through at least 3 Acura press conferences at the Detroit Auto Show showing, the new NSX concept, as it went through various iterations from the first time they showed one up until they finally had the production model. It took a long time because, they did a lot of redesign under the skin, over the course of its development, because it didn't start off as a hybrid. It started off with a transverse V6. They went to a longitudinal V6. They made it a little bit bigger, a lot more powerful. So it changed quite a bit, over its long development period.
Yeah, it's inexplicable to me why it hasn't become more of an icon or more impressive. I mean, even the Ford GT, right, has gotten successively more expensive and exotic and different. And that sort of has a shine to it as well that maybe the NSX doesn't. I don't know. They need better marketing. We can help them.
So how much is the one that you have?
Well, I did not have one Monroney in the glove box, but I tried to price it out. And it looks like the one I have, I got to look at my notes, because it had all the carbon fiber accents, which is another almost $10K.
Oh, but
the engine cover.
You have to have the carbon fiber.
Right? It had the carbon fiber engine cover, which is $3,600. And I believe it had the ceramic brakes, 10K. So I think we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 185-ish, probably more, because I'm sure there's stuff on there that I'm missing, because I was literally just trying to piece it together. So you're probably, $185,000. It's not a cheap choice by any means. But if I had $185,000 to burn, would I park that in my driveway? Absolutely. If I could park a $185,000 Acura NSX, because I had the cash and cash didn't matter, or the most tricked out version of the Corvette, which probably still isn't even going to come close to that, I wouldn't think. I think you can probably add everything Corvette puts on a Corvette. I'd still go with the NSX because I just enjoyed driving it that much. It was just such an easy car to drive. You could really drive it every day. It wouldn't be one of those things you'd only take out when it was sunny and you just wanted to go for a cruise. You could really drive that often and enjoy it.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see the comparison between like the NSX and what's the cheap McLaren? You mentioned McLaren.
The 620
McLaren.
Yeah,
I love that you use it.
620, and that's about to be replaced by the.
Has anyone ever said those two words, cheap and McLaren,
Probably,
together like that in history?
The most affordable McLaren.
Most affordable.
There you go.
What's the McLaren that costs like a
not quite as much as your house?
Right, a fixer
the least ridiculously priced McLaren. I think they start around $200,000.
Yeah, I was going to say they make a car that's like right in that range. That would be.
So then we need to do that. I'll just tell McLaren, hey, give me a car so I can compare it to the NSX.
You know what? You need to do that.
Sure, that'll totally happen.
Hey, you are a NACTOY juror now, and they just launched the Artura. So that should be eligible, I would think, for North American Car of the Year.
Okay, we'll see if that ends up in my driveway. I'm not holding my breath.
They'll fly you to Yas Marina in Abu Dhabi or someplace like that to drive it.
That sounds good.
That doesn't sound
I'll do
bad.
that.
Yeah, I mean
that'll work if I have to.
All right, so Sam, what are you driving?
So I had the Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport, the 2.0 SEL Premium. So it's got the 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder. So this is basically the same engine that's in a GTI, but in a very, very different vehicle. I've always liked the Atlas, since I drove the original one, 3 years ago, I think almost now. It's a good, mid-size, upper mid-size SUV, crossover SUV thing. The Cross Sport, basically they shaved off, the back end of the roof line and ditched the third row seat, which was always kind of dubious, because the Atlas is not really. It's one of those, upper midsize that they have a third row in there, but it's certainly not big enough to accommodate adults. It's really a kids only seat in that third row.
Did you try and climb back there?
I have in the past. So the Cross Sport doesn't offer the third row. It's strictly 2-row. Okay. To the Atlas, it's kind of like the Passport is to the Honda Pilot. Gotcha. So same chassis, same wheelbase, but a little bit shorter body, and they get rid of the third row. The upside of that is you have enormous cargo space in the back behind that second row. There's a lot of cargo room in there, which makes it really great, for road trips or whatever kind of lifestyle activities, beach carrying, whatever you need to, wherever you need to take it. It's great in that respect. I've always thought the Atlas drove pretty well. Never had any complaints about that. I think this is the first time I've had one. All the previous times I've driven the Atlas, a couple of times I've had the Atlas, it had the V6 engine, the 3.6 liter V6, which actually feels I was just looking at the specs. By the numbers, it doesn't have a whole lot more torque. Like the Turbo 4's got 258 pounds-feet of torque, and the V6 has 266. But it feels a lot stronger, which is odd because usually, these Turbo 4s usually have really good low end torque. And I think it actually, the complaint I had about it, is more about when you're driving it in normal mode. When you put it in sport mode, it actually feels a lot more lively. In the normal drive mode, it feels kind of sluggish. And it's 235 horsepower, which is not bad, but it just doesn't feel as aggressive as I might want. So I ended up driving it in sport mode most of the time. Or it actually feels quite good. I liked it. Fuel economy didn't quite match up to the EPA numbers, which are, it's EPA rated at 22 miles per gallon. I think I got about 18 and a half, 19 miles per gallon with it.
Oh, that's ugly.
But, yeah. So for a vehicle in this size class, it's not that impressive. I mean, you can do a lot better, and I think I've actually gotten better fuel economy in the past with the V6. So I think I would probably recommend, going with the V6 just because it generally feels better than the 4-cylinder does and generally gets better fuel economy. Because I think the 4-cylinder, because it seems like it's got to work harder, it's generally not going to get as good fuel economy.
I think to be fair, though, among other vehicles that size, that class, that fuel economy is not off the mark. It's just that's about what you're going to expect.
I usually get over 20 without too much difficulty. Usually get in the 21 to 22 range.
Yeah, I would expect it to be there, but like our Grand Cherokee, which is rather hefty, gets 18 on the regular as an average is not uncommon, depending on how we drive it. Like, so what was your driving loop? Was it mostly in town or highway or? Yeah,
it was a mix, mostly around town, so, that obviously hurts it more. I did some highway driving with it, so it's not the worst fuel economy, but it's definitely not best in class for fuel economy. at least with the 4-cylinder. Like I said, I've gotten better with the V6 before, so I think I'd probably recommend people look at the V6 instead. Design-wise, I really like the Cross Sport. I think that changing the roofline the way they did, it definitely gives it a sportier look than the standard Atlas does. And I mean, it's not a huge change. It's actually the same length overall. And it's just like cutting off the back end, like the last foot of the roofline and, slanting the rear glass. And it makes a pretty substantial difference to the overall feel of it. So I like the design. But one of the reasons why I asked to drive this one, because I have driven the Atlas before, is Rebecca had a Cross Sport back in, I want to say, November, December timeframe, and she posted a video of her adventures trying to use the voice recognition in this thing.
Right.
She was sitting outside the post office near her home, trying to ask the voice recognition, to find this post office.
Right, and it was like, do you mean pizza?
Yeah, I mean, it was a complete disaster, a total disaster. So I tried doing that, and it was just as bad, if not worse. I mean, it was completely hopeless at trying to find anything by voice. The VW really needs to ditch whoever their voice recognition provider is for the Atlas and start over again.
Now I feel like I have to try that the first time I get one, start trying to ask it to give me directions and do things. But I have notoriously bad luck with every voice activated everything I've ever used in my entire life. Like I could say, call mom, and it's like, yeah, deflating tires. I'm like, no, that's not what I said. Like it just does not. I don't know what it is about my voice, but I never find that it's always easier. Like I'll tell my phone, like I'll ask Siri to do whatever I want to do, to get it to work through. But if I ask the car directly, forget it. All bets are off.
Yeah, the overall user interface of their infotainment system is fine. I mean, it's comparable to what you find in most modern cars. Nothing particularly great or terrible about it. Just that voice recognition is just completely, utterly hopeless. But what it does have wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support, which is good. And the one I had the wireless charging pad underneath, in the little pocket at the bottom of the center stack. So, once you connect it the first time, the next time when you get in the car, it just automatically connects to the phone. I don't have to mess around with, plugging it in or anything like that. If the phone's in my pocket and I don't want to take it out, I can leave it there, or I can drop it on the charging pad, and it charges up. So I think if you get one of these, especially, the 2021 and newer, which has the wireless support, just connect your phone and use Siri or Google Assistant and be done with it. Don't even bother trying to use the Volkswagen voice recognition, because all it's going to do is irritate you. It is just utterly atrocious.
What trim did you have?
The SEL Premium.
So it was about $45,000.
All in, this one, including the delivery charge, came to $48,115. Okay. So close, yeah.
That's priced very well, actually.
Yeah, I mean it's very comparable, to the other top vehicles in this class. Similarly equipped, like a Kia Telluride or a Hyundai Palisade, and anything else, in this upper midsize segment, Ford Explorer. They're all in that mid to upper $40,000 range.
Yeah.
Which of the ones you just rattled off would you get if you had your $48,000?
It would probably be either the Cross Sport with the V6 or the Telluride, the Kia Telluride. I like the Telluride.
I like the Telluride, although I'm holding out. I really, really, really want to drive the new Grand Cherokee.
I really want to drive that too.
It's coming. It's coming.
You can't. That wasn't on the list. We had to do the ones that he just rattled off. The Palisade, the Telluride. What else did you say? Explorer. Or the Atlas Cross Sport.
I want to spend more seat time in the Explorer as well. The most recent version of that I had was the Aviator, and if that was any indication, I probably would wind up with the Telluride, just for the extra sort of space and ease of use and some of the things you get with the Kia.
Plus, the Kia has the sounds of nature.
Yes, exactly.
That's right. You can have all sorts of random stuff playing in the background as you drive along.
They're crunching snow.
or the sound of a French cafe as you're driving down the freeway.
Right. Yeah. You think there's people in the back seat having a little latte.
I don't think that's a problem, especially if they speak in French, like voulez-vous la café? But the Atlas, the Atlas itself, the regular one, looks pretty good. It looks hefty. The Cross Sport, I just can't get past the way the bottom section looks like the regular Atlas, and then the top section looks like they put a coupe roof on it, which is the point, but it just draws your eye down to all this weight of the meaty front end.
There is a lot of visual mass in the bottom of it.
Yeah.
But, especially the 3/4 views, I think it works. It works well because it gives it that sort of almost Raptor kind of off-road capable appearance. I mean, it's obviously not going to be as off-road capable as something like a Jeep, but it kind of gives you that feel to it. And I like that. I like that look.
They really did study the rest of the class and figure out what are the design cues that seem to move the metal. And it really does look like an amalgam of all the successful designs in its own class, which is fine. It looks good. It's got a lot of wheel arch though. A lot of just the way that character line goes up over the it just, I don't know. It looks thick to me, I guess. So I'm not sure what the right word is, but it's.
But this was a vehicle that was specifically designed for the American market. And it has supplanted a lot of the car sales for Volkswagen in North America. So that's the kind of look that, to be honest, the most American consumers are more interested in.
If we're buying
I had to pull it up and look at it now. And it does. It has that squishy roof and the very heavy bottom. That is what a lot of the newer vehicles in that class look like, though.
Yeah.
They really do look like that. That is kind of the style. So, yeah.
Look, if it's moving cars, fine. Because mostly I want Volkswagen to succeed because they will keep paying for Electrify America. And we could use that. And I think, honestly, the thing that Volkswagen does that I like is less on the outside and more on the inside with their ergonomics and interiors and just the way they are to operate. Their infotainment aside, which it lags a little bit, not lags in performance, but lags sort of in user experience. They still, I still see 3 big knobs and some buttons for the HVAC. Stuff is where you expect it to be.
Yeah, I think things are well laid out in the interior. It's easy to use. Everything except the voice recognition just works.
I don't like to talk to people anyway, and I definitely don't talk to cars.
Excuse. You need to buy one of these. Like, sorry, talk. It's cracking. I can't hear you.
So it'll be fine. I'm surprised though that it impresses you that much, Sam, that you'd buy the or is it just that little subset of?
Well, let me step back. As you know, I am not an SUV person.
Or you've done the Volkswagen thing.
Yeah. I have been there, have done that, sold it back to Volkswagen, at least the most recent one.
What did you have? What Volkswagen? I missed. What kind of Volkswagen?
We had a couple of them. We had a 2000 Passat wagon, and then we had a 2010 Jetta TDI wagon.
Okay.
And we did the buyback with the diesel Jetta. They were great cars to drive. We loved driving them. They had fantastic driving dynamics, and they were both of them were primarily my wife's cars. And, she really enjoyed driving them, even despite the issues we had with the Passat. She still wanted to buy the Jetta. She wanted to buy another Volkswagen. And, that one didn't have nearly as many issues as the Passat did. Enough time has passed that I would not rule out buying a VW again in the future. In 2017, when we did the buyback, I was not inclined to ever buy another Volkswagen. But, that feeling has faded. But just SUVs, crossovers in general, I'm not the market. I'm not the customer for those vehicles.
That's true. Yeah.
I buy cars.
Your station wagon days have passed. Yeah, you don't have those needs. You're
we have a Civic. We have a 2017 Honda Civic hatchback and my Miata. And that's the kind of car that I like to drive.
You're like the anti-SUV with those things.
Exactly. But if I were buying an SUV, this is certainly something I would consider.
I've always liked the first 2 cars I bought were Volkswagens, so I've just always liked Volkswagens. I have no problem with buying one. I think, though, in that group that you were mentioning, I really like the Telluride. I just love that.
Look at that. The Telluride wins again. That's
it's a good vehicle. It's good, dang it.
It is. I mean, if you need, a larger vehicle like that to haul people and stuff around, which I don't, then it's a great choice. Yeah. And I like the design of it, the way it looks, the way it drives, and the way it's laid out inside. I like all of that about the Telluride.
It's just that great combination that makes it tough to beat. I've been driving
another Super Duty, right?
No, another Ford. But I was so excited to get this. They dropped off the Mustang Mach-E the other day, and then I promptly didn't drive it for like a day and a half because I was busy with other things. So I've put some miles on it. I haven't put as many as I'd like to. And I know we had some questions from listeners. Their main concern is, does the range hold up? And the best I can say right now is that it's showing about 48% battery, and it says it's got 96 miles of range. So that seems like it's calculates out to being right on what they say it's supposed to be. Off the top of my head, I'm not. I don't have all of the numbers in front of me, but it's fine though. Like, you don't worry about range. It's not going to get you. Just charge it when it needs to be charged. And it can do things like, fast charge if you have a station near you, and you can clearly see how much range you've got left. So just plan. That said, this is probably the best EV I've driven so far. And I haven't driven every EV available, but this is a really, really complete effort. I'm very impressed with the Mach-E. I played around with some of the features. It has the things that will please you if you expect it to be Mustang-ish. You can put it in unbridled mode, which is my favorite in terms of driving dynamics. And it has it'll play the little rumble from the back speakers of the V8 if you miss that. I found myself just shutting it off because the trick with the EV is just like, you get that kind of performance and it's quiet about it. It's a different experience. And it's kind of like my daughter was, picked her up with it, and we got on the highway. So we went up the on-ramp, and just to get that surge of torque, she's like, woo. I was like, yeah, it's like riding the Rorosaurus at Storyland, because it's just, the electric motor acceleration is what happens on a roller coaster. And that's what you get, the same kind of thing. You start to go fast. It's really well put together. The interior, I think, is, there's some criticism that I think is valid. You've got to trim weight and cost out of the car though. So overall, I like the design. I like that not just Ford, but other automakers too are using fabric as an interior design element. It's a nice touch to have that speaker grille kind of fabric. Everything looks good. The cowl is pretty low for, I guess, a modern car. So I like how there's not a lot of stuff in your face. The giant screen is still taking me a while to get used to. I'm finding my way around it. I think that's one of those things where, and this is another thing where my daughter, 15-year-old, they're all like tech wizards. She's like, where do I find how do I find my phone to pair it up and stuff? It's like, let's hang on. Let's figure it out. She's like, why is it so hard? It's like, because you set it once, and then once the car is set up as your device, it's the stuff you want is there. So you only go through the pain for that first, few days or few weeks of ownership. And then once you learn it, everything becomes second nature. You can customize the screen to have what you want there. So as an owner, I think that's much less of an issue than it is as a reviewer. I'm probably not going to get all the way through learning that interface before I have to hand the car back. But the instrument panel in front of you is just this little LED that gets blocked by the wheel a little bit. So I was like,
oh, I found that too.
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was, I'm interrupting because I was wondering if it was just like my height or how I sat my seat, but I felt like it took the edges, I couldn't see the whole thing. And I thought that has to be just me, that for some reason I'm exactly the wrong spot.
I mean, it could just be us that we're not the right type of shape. There's not really information over in the edges that get blocked, but it's like that doesn't.
It's disconcerting. You feel like you're missing something even though you're not.
Yeah. But dynamically, the steering is great. The acceleration is certainly fun. The ride and handling are well done. It's very composed. I've had it on back roads, and it actually, just the way it goes down the road encouraged me to bend it through some of my favorite curvy sections. And that was a good time. So, EVs sometimes tend to not want to be driven in anger. They both protest with their tires and stuff. The Mach-E is it's a really complete effort, as I guess sort of my best way to describe it. Rear seat headroom's not super great. I think it's fine for what it is. The hatch area is a good load area. I stuck a bike in there. Went and picked up the bike from the shop. So, as a car that you can use, I think it's the right call to have it be a 4-door, 5-passenger Mustang. They own the Mustang brand. They can make whatever the hell they want to call a Mustang is a Mustang. So,
back in the 60s, they looked at doing, Mustang sedans. There were multiple prototypes of Mustang station wagons.
Yeah.
Which, I still think they should have built at least one of those.
There's custom ones out there, right?
Oh, yeah.
You've seen the custom.
Yeah, there are.
It's a really good car, and the Mustang brand, I think, helps sort of get people chattering, whether or not they love it or hate it. The guy across the street, he's got a Grand Cherokee SRT, and he's hot rods and stuff like that. So he backs out of the driveway yesterday, and he rolls down the window and goes, "That's a Mustang, huh? Yeah, it goes like a Mustang." And overall, it's just pleasant. It's a good EV effort, and I think it's got a bright future. The thing that I was on the lookout for, and some listeners have asked, is how the brake handoff between regen and friction is. And that's, I think, where their over-the-air software update is going to help them. This is the first Ford that can do OTA.
Yes.
And so that's...
this and the F-150. The new F-150 can also do it.
Yeah, that's going to help them out, because I think that the one-pedal driving I wanted to be able to adjust the aggressiveness of the one-pedal driving, and if you can, I haven't figured it out yet. I don't think you can. I think you just put it in one pedal mode.
Yeah, you either enable it or disable it.
Right.
There's no gradation for it.
Yeah, so it can be a little aggressive. I actually prefer it in non one pedal mode, just because it still seems to regen a little when you coast, and it's not quite as hard. Like you get a lot of decel out of it at all times when you're in one pedal driving and you let off. And there are times where you do want to coast a little more, and you don't want to regen as hard. So that's something they can solve with a software update. And I think that also plays into the braking with a handoff between regen and friction. It can be a little grabby. I think one of the things that happens as a car reviewer is we drive a lot of cars and we adapt to stuff like that. So maybe the first couple stops was, all right, that's a little grabby, and we figure it out pretty quick. If you're coming from a different car, you don't drive a lot of stuff on a regular basis, it may be a little bit more disconcerting. I can see what people are talking about. To me, I don't really find it to be an issue.
I think you might be right, Tim, because we do so often have to get in a vehicle that you're not quite sure how the braking is going to feel. You're not quite sure how the acceleration is going to feel. And you have a couple of awkward stops or starts before you get the hang of it, that if you've never done one pedal driving like that before, I do think it'd be a little bit tricky in the Mach-E, and you might have that moment of, oh, I can't do this. It's going to take some getting used to, and it is a little grabby. But I wonder how much that would bother people who really never experienced that kind of thing before, because it is more aggressive. Hopefully, like you said, the software updates will smooth out that transition and make it a little easier over time.
Yeah, it always is challenging to do the blending between regen and friction. I mean, back the last couple of years I was working as an engineer, that's actually what I was working on, was electrohydraulic brake systems for hybrids. And, that was one of the challenges, was going back and forth between regen and friction braking and trying to get that transition smooth. It's really hard to do because friction brakes can be very inconsistent, depending on how hot they are, if the brake pads or the rotors are wet, if it's cold, all kinds of different conditions change that. And if you've got one or the other, you do get used to it. But, when you're trying to control that blending of the two, it's really hard from a software perspective. And one of the things you can do in the Mach-E, if you switch the drive modes, like you can't really control the one pedal driving directly, change the amount of regen you're getting. But if you switch between the unbridled and the whisper and the engaged mode, it does actually change the amount of regen you get. So if you go to engaged or down to whisper, you will get a little bit less aggressive regen. The first time I drove a car with really aggressive regen like that was back in 2008 when BMW launched the Mini E. Remember that fleet they had? They built like 500 electric Minis as a pilot program to learn from, and they leased them out to customers so they could learn how people use EVs. That was the first one I drove that had that kind of one pedal driving. And at first it was really disconcerting, but I got used to it pretty fast. And, it's just a matter of you learn to modulate the accelerator pedal. So it's not like with a gas car where, when you lift your foot off the accelerator, it just sort of coasts. Now it's more like, bumper cars when you go to the Midway, because those are one pedal and work, very much the same way. I
think that's a really good analog for it. Yeah. And once you get used to it, you start to be able to anticipate what you're going to get. So, just how much to back off the pedal to get the amount of braking that you want. Right. And so you can come to a full stop behind somebody or, to a stop sign or stoplight or something without ever needing to use the brakes. But even in regular driving mode, without one pedal, the brakes can be a little grabby and a little inconsistent. I suppose some folks have felt that way. I didn't find it inconsistent. I do think that there's maybe a little bit of difficulty in modulating the brakes. And I think, again, that's something you can tune out of the car. So, and if those are our two main complaints, it's like how the brakes work and how one pedal driving is. It's like for a fully new model, because you look around the Mach-E, they've really, anytime you're doing a car like this where you're reinventing sort of the propulsion system, but you're also reinventing the car itself around it, to reflect that. They didn't have to do it this complete. They could have just, stuck this powertrain in in an Explorer, for example, and it would be like a regular Explorer with an electric motor or whatever. But it's not that. It's every aspect of the car has been considered. The door handles are different. We talked about that on the show when you had it, Sam, with the button and the little handle there. Even the interior door handles are different. They remind me of the ones in my Volvo 740s because they're in the armrest and you pull them back like that. But all of those little aspects have been rethought. And so that's kind of like a continual delight as an owner or a driver to just see everything you do with the car. Somebody's been here and tried it and thought about it and done it this way or designed it this way. And that way in the Mach-E is sometimes different than the way it's been for 40 years and everything else. So that's fun. I like that aspect of it too.
It was a very thoughtfully designed car. There's nothing in there that you think they just phoned this in. They didn't pay attention to it. There's a lot of thought that was put into how it looks, the ergonomics of it, how it is to live with it, how it feels to drive that car and ride in it. And like you said, if the only thing we can complain about is that it takes a little longer than we'd like to get used to the grabbiness of the brakes. And the more you drive it, the more that's going to become intuitive. I think of it a little bit like when you get behind the wheel of something that has a manual transmission. I know, like, we're the only three people that know how to drive those anymore. Right? But, not every manual is the same. Some of them you get in and you're trying to find that pressure point on the clutch. And some of them you don't have to think about it, you get it right away. Others you're like, whoa. And for a few, the first couple times you're stopping and going, you're driving a little bit like someone who's just learned. You got to figure that out. Once you get it, you've got it. And you never have to figure it out again. Yeah. So I think it's just a little bit like that. There's a learning curve to it. And that hopefully between that and then smoothing it out over updates, it's something won't be an issue.
Yeah. So what did you two think about it? You both of you have had a chance to drive it as well. Am I off my rocker? Am I on point? What's our Mach-E consensus?
I agreed with you. I mean, I did notice the grabby brakes. I was thinking about it as you guys were talking. The first vehicle I ever did with one pedal was actually the Nissan Leaf, which is an entirely different vehicle, but like one pedal driving is one pedal driving.
I love the Leaf too. I love that car.
Right. But the Leaf was, and I was trying to remember, what was it like the first time I got behind the wheel of something with that one pedal driving? And it was hard, but I don't remember it ever being as grabby as the Mach-E. Yeah. I never remember, it was that first okay, so if I take my foot off, whoa, and suddenly you're stopping because I've taken my foot away too fast. But I remember finding it a little easier to modulate, and that was like the first ever. So I do think there's a difference. I definitely think the Mach-E is grabbier, but I figure, okay, it's just going to take a little more time to get used to it. If I was driving this every day back and forth to work, like in the before times, then you would get used to it pretty quick, right? So it's just a learning curve with it. But overall, I thought it was great. I had the steering wheel issue that you had, but using it, sitting in it, the materials, it has that very sort of utilitarian kind of thing that EVs do because they're trying to get rid of as much weight as possible. It's not overdone inside, but it's kind of streamlined and elegant. I liked it. Overall, I thought it was great.
The design is quite nice. The materials, I kind of have to give them a little bit of a pass on that. They're trying to get cost and weight out. So
exactly,
it's not a Lincoln.
You can't have genuine wood and genuine steel and genuine leather everywhere, or you're suddenly
actually, it doesn't have leather at all.
Right.
This is one of the things they talked about at the launch of the Mach-E was, this use of what they call vegan leather. It's a synthetic,
Just basically fake leather, but thank you. Not leather.
And it's fine though. It feels like leather. It looks like it's nice.
It's a nice material.
Yeah,
it does.
So who needs cows?
It's not like the plasticky vinyl that was on the seats in my dad's 1973 Dodge Dart.
Where you'd sit on it with shorts and it would
your legs.
It would sear you and then you'd stick to it.
It would burn your legs. I used to hate. My mom had a Century, and it had navy blue vinyl seats that were sort of like this. Yeah. Oh God, that thing was the worst.
But to the question of range, I assume you probably had the extended range battery all-wheel drive Mach-E.
It's all-wheel drive. I haven't looked to see what.
Yeah, I think all the ones in the press fleet are the bigger battery.
Oh, and to be fair too, like this is a pre-production car. It doesn't have a price on it. It says not to be sold. So that means that some of the tuning may not be final. That's something I should say.
I think they're regularly updating the software in the press fleet cars, but it's officially rated at 270 miles of range with all-wheel drive. It's 300 miles with the rear-wheel drive version. Edmunds they've actually published 2 articles over the last month or so where they did a bunch of real-world range testing with a whole group of EVs, and to see how the real-world range compares to the EPA numbers, and the first one, the original one they did, the longest range was the Tesla Model 3 long range, which is rated at 353. It went 345 miles. The Porsche Taycan, which got a lot of criticism, including from me when it came out last year, for only having an EPA range of 203 miles. They actually got 323 miles out of it. And almost everybody that's driven the Taycan has gotten way beyond what the official EPA range is. And it came in second. The Mach-E was fifth. It's at 270 miles. It got 304 miles on their real world test.
Wow.
So, and the testing I did when I had it in early February or late January was, that was when it was very cold. And, I drove 164 miles and still had 80 miles left on it. So you're in the 240, 250 mile range, even, at sub-freezing temperatures, which is actually really good.
Did you use the heat and stuff at all, or did you precondition?
Yeah. I preconditioned it, but then I had the climate control on, but I had it, set at like 65, so it was comfortable, but not, using too much of the battery. And, I think, in more temperate weather, I can definitely see getting, 300 miles or more out of the thing. So I think range is not really an issue for the Mach-E.
Well, one of the questions we had was how usable is it both day to day, and can it handle weekend trips 200 miles from home for a family of 4? I think it's eminently usable day to day. Build quality is great. And even on a pre-production car, I'm not noticing any flaws in terms of like body gaps or anything like that. No rattles. It's just nice and tight. They know how to put a car together. So this one is screwed together well. 200 miles from home, if you're doing a 400 mile round trip, as long as you have charging where you're going, that's fine. You should have no problem getting there. The Ford Pass app will sort of help you plan your trip. It's going to show you chargers. That's where I actually found the closest fast charger, because I can go and charge at level 2 in town. But I want to try fast charging because there's reports of the fast charge level ramping up and then quickly back down once it hits a peak. So I want to see if I can have anything to say about that. I don't know what my experience is going to be. we're starting to see that wave of solid EVs coming from everybody. Volkswagen's right behind Ford with their EVs that are going to start to hit the market, and they're all moving very aggressively to get them into the market. That Edmunds tested, they actually run out of juice, or did they test them till they were displaying zero range?
The original test that they did in early February, they published in early February, was testing it till it was at zero range. Tesla actually complained quite vociferously about this because every single Tesla that they tested, and they tested a bunch of different variants, Model Ys, S's, and X's, every single Tesla fell short of the EPA range, while almost every other EV exceeded the EPA range, in some cases by a significant amount. And Tesla complained about this and said, well, we leave a buffer in there. Even when it's at zero, there's still some charge left. And so Edmunds went back and retested some of them. And they retested five of them, or six of them. And four, even with that extra buffer, they ran it until it came to a complete stop. It had no charge left. And four of the six still failed to meet the EPA range, even with that. So it's, Tesla, is kind of notorious for overstating on the EPA range. Almost every independent test that's been done, North America, Europe, elsewhere, of range with Teslas sees them falling anywhere from 20 to 30% shy, in many cases, of the EPA range numbers. Yeah.
I think it's a great effort, and I hope that they build more EVs on this platform. I'm pleased with the Mach-E.
Yeah, it sounds like they are. In fact, there was some news out of Ohio last week. Originally, I guess they had planned in the last union contract, they had told the UAW that they would build EVs at the Avon Lake Assembly Plant near Cleveland. And currently that plant builds medium and heavy duty trucks. They were going to do EVs there, but they changed the plan. And they're actually going to build a couple more EVs in Cuautitlán, Mexico, where they build the Mach-E, and because they want to keep building the medium and heavy duty trucks in Avon Lake. And the union was not thrilled about that. They said, well, no, we want EV production. It's like, well, it's not like you're losing any jobs. So anyway, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, they're going to be building at least a couple more vehicles off the same Mach-E platform, one of which will almost certainly be a Lincoln.
And that will have the nice interior that everybody can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The real wood and all the other fancy trims.
Full fat leather.
Full fat leather.
Smartphones have gotten way more expensive over the past decade, and all it takes is one impact on a hard floor to make you wish you had spent a few bucks to put a case on it. Going online without ExpressVPN is like not having a case for your phone, and it only costs a few dollars a month. Nicole, Robbie, and I travel a lot for our work, and we spend a lot of time in hotels, coffee shops, airplanes, and of course the Delta Sky Club. Connecting to the Wi-Fi in any public places with shared Wi-Fi puts your data at risk because bad actors could be intercepting what you send and using it to steal from you. It only takes some cheap hardware to intercept Wi-Fi data, and even a smart preteen can do it. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per victim selling personal information on the dark web. ExpressVPN stops the bad guys by creating a secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet. ExpressVPN uses state-of-the-art encryption that would take a supercomputer up to 1 billion years to crack. I have ExpressVPN on all my devices, including a MacBook Pro, Windows laptops and desktops, and Android and iOS phones and laptops, or tablets. When I want to be secure, I just launch the app, click once to connect, and my data is secure. As I said, I travel a lot for my work, and I have to connect to countless public Wi-Fi networks in many countries. I have ExpressVPN on all my connected devices so that whoever else is on the same network can't see any of my data. That's important because I often have to check banks, credit card accounts, and transmit client data that might be sensitive, as well as filing articles on news that might be under embargo. ExpressVPN protects all of it, and I've been paying for my own account for years. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/wheelbearings. That's expressvpn.com/wheelbearings, and you can get an extra 4 months for free. expressvpn.com/wheelbearings.
So we've gotten through the fleet. I love the first topic that we have here on our list, buying a Tesla with Bitcoin, because that just seems like the more we talk about words like that together, we're going to get sucked into a vortex. That's tech bro buzzword bonanza there. But if you buy a Tesla with Bitcoin, you're going to get whacked for taxes.
If you're not familiar with Bitcoin, first of all, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency.
It's a giant Excel spreadsheet. That's all. That's really like
slightly more complicated than that, but yeah,
close.
So
also, if you're buying a Tesla because they're saving the world, understand that Bitcoin is the filthiest, most dirty, power-consuming thing. Right? You should just not.
It requires a lot of power, a lot of electricity to mine Bitcoin, and then also to do the transactions because of the way it works with this idea of the blockchain. Yeah, this fancy spreadsheet. The concept of the blockchain is actually really cool, and I'm not going to get into that today, but there's a lot of really interesting applications of that. This is not one of them. The problem with Bitcoin, is actually because the way it was set up, it's actually a really terrible currency to use. As something to use to buy stuff. It's really not very practical at all, and it's complicated, and there's a lot of problems with it.
Well, it's not a fiat currency like. Well,
it is.
Is it? I thought it was more like something like gold, where it's like because there's only so many. It's it's different than like a dollar, which is.
Just
it's
paper.
Yeah, right. The dollar is just paper, but it's backed by
a Bitcoin. A Bitcoin only has value to the extent that people believe it has value.
Well, yeah,
which is what a fiat currency is.
Okay, I thought.
At least with gold, you can have a physical coin that you mint out of gold.
True. That's true,
and you can exchange something physical in exchange for some goods, and you've got something that has some. Even the value of gold to some degree is fiat, but
and we don't mean the automaker.
Bitcoin is a fiat currency that's not controlled by any government.
I think that's where I'm getting stuck because our fiat currencies, we tend to think of them as backed by the full faith and whatever of a government, and that government that federal backing means that they're generally good for their debts,
right?
And so a fiat
whereas
currency,
Bitcoin has none of that,
right? Like
it's valued at whatever people trading it on any given day think it's valued at.
Which is ludicrous.
So the thing is, because the value of Bitcoin bounces around all over the place, it's highly volatile, and a lot of people are investing in it. Actually, I wouldn't say they're investing in it. They are speculating.
Nicole, do you own any Bitcoin?
I do not own any Bitcoin. I do not. Do either of you?
No.
I didn't think so. Did you suddenly think I was quiet because she owns Bitcoin?
No, I just wanted to know.
Although
no, I don't.
One of my kids does. She has invested in Bitcoin.
Okay.
But that's a whole other issue. I don't want to get into that.
Did she invest like back in the day and then lose the pass key or whatever? Like I have Bitcoin on a hard drive somewhere.
Yeah. I have $1 million of Bitcoin, but it's on a hard drive in a dump.
But one of the things I do a weekly car tech segment on Leo Laporte's Tech Guy radio show, and years ago Leo had set up a tip jar for his Twit podcast network for where you could donate Bitcoin, and people had donated almost 8 Bitcoin into that tip jar.
It's got to be worth a lot now.
It's worth about $500,000 now. Wow. The problem is Leo has the Bitcoin wallet. He has no idea what the password is.
There are
for the last
that
3 years.
Didn't Kara Swisher go through this?
Laporte lose that? I mean, Mr. Techie guy. How does Leo of all people to make that mistake?
And hang on, aren't they sponsored by LastPass?
They were, yeah. But for whatever reason, Leo never actually put the password for that wallet in LastPass.
There are companies that can help him figure that out.
My entire impression of Leo Laporte is the man lost his password.
No, he's just like us. That's all. He's just like us.
He's just like a man of people, just like me.
We have passwords on scraps of paper everywhere.
Yeah. It's just so the thing is, because Bitcoin's value bounces around everywhere. When you buy some Bitcoin and then you go to spend it on something, it's going to get converted back to dollars or to some other currency. And when you transfer it to somebody else, now that the difference in that value from when you bought it to when you transfer it, in this case, transferring it to Elon Musk in exchange for a Tesla vehicle, the IRS wants capital gains tax paid on that. If you bought that Bitcoin at $20,000 and it's now worth $60,000, you're going to have to pay taxes on that. So you're potentially, depending on, how much the value has appreciated over time, you may be, if you buy a $50,000 Tesla with Bitcoin, you might be on the hook for several thousand, or perhaps, depending on how long you've been holding that Bitcoin, perhaps tens of thousands of dollars in capital gains tax on, just in addition to the price of buying the car.
But that's going to happen anytime, though. Whenever no matter what, then when you finally use that Bitcoin to buy it.
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely
true.
Whether
you want to have it in little tiny bits and pieces as you spend your Bitcoin wherever, or one ginormous chunk when you spend a whole bunch of it to buy yourself a Tesla.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to think of it is it's a lot like your IRA or something, right? Like it's got this value. When you cash that value out, you're receiving that money. You need to pay tax on that money, because depending on your IRA, I know there's some that you pay tax on the way in, but if it's a traditional IRA, when you take a distribution, you've got a capital gain. Like you have gotten the capital out of your asset or your investment. So now you need to pay tax on that at that time. So Bitcoin is really like that sort of idea where it's got value stored in it. When you extract the value, now you're on the hook for the taxes of that value. It seems like a much higher tax rate than what you would pay just like a normal transaction for a car like a Tesla. Like if you weren't paying with Bitcoin.
Yeah, you're paying that in addition to, I think the capital gains tax rate is like 15%. So you're paying that on top of whatever sales tax, in the state where you buy the car.
No sales tax.
Yeah, right. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of Bitcoin tech pros in New Hampshire. They like New Hampshire because it's tax.
There's a Bitcoin machine dispenser. I don't know. Like there's a thing at like this local little diner, and I always see it. It's like a little box thing on the wall that's like a Bitcoin thing. Huh. I've never investigated. I'll take a picture. I'll show it to you. I'm like, Bitcoin, why? And it's in this like little diner. Just randomly. I don't know. Maybe you can pay for your food in Bitcoin. I don't know. I want to get a burger and fries worth of Bitcoin.
That's an expensive meal.
It's funny, there are stories like back in the early days of Bitcoin in, early 2010s. There was a story of some guy, when it first launched, there were a few places that started accepting Bitcoin as payment. And some guy, bought a pizza with like 7 Bitcoin, when it was worth like a dollar, and just, I wouldn't even want to think about having done something like that. Now, that's 7 Bitcoin,
it's $1 million pizza,
$400,000 pizza.
It's like those crazy meals you get where you get like, shaved gold on top of something, the edible gold leaf. It's like, that's basically
right, like those are the automaker luncheons that they have us press people to. Right.
It'll be 1 Bitcoin for each of us for that lunch.
Right. Why would you ever do this? What?
Well, if you want to, if you don't have, it makes no sense, but it makes sense. So you have to pay the capital gains on that Bitcoin no matter what at some point. If you feel like cashing it in, right? Someday you're getting hit with that. Yeah. So you can either wait and get hit with it whenever. Maybe you're making less money when you're retired. So it makes more sense to do it when you're retired or something. But you're going to pay capital gains regardless. So if you don't have the money to buy the car, but you can use your Bitcoin and handle the capital gains, your net might still be better, at this moment. If it's like, that's what stands between me getting a Tesla or not, paying the capital gains on that money or having to come up with, 60 grand.
Yeah. If it's, if you bought Bitcoin when it was 10 or 100 or even $1,000, right? It's, $55,000, $60,000 now a Bitcoin, it's basically free money. So even if you take out that tax, exactly. You're still going to be way ahead.
People just have to, it's just people who don't know that there's a capital gains on the Bitcoin. That's where suddenly it's like, oh shoot, didn't know that. Yeah. That's where you're surprised.
I think that's I think the danger of Bitcoin is because it's so popular and it's something that's on the tip of everybody's tongue, but it's an investment. It's an investment instrument. And so you have to understand investing. And you have to be savvy about that. And it's
a speculative investment instrument.
And so anytime you're investing and you're doing these things, you need to understand what's going to happen. Like, I can put money in. Am I going to lose it? Straight speculation, or am I putting it in like a mutual fund where it's generally a little bit of a better bet? Or, when I draw on that, what am I gonna pay? And that's, when you, and especially the class of investment, if you draw on your IRA, if you look at your IRA and you're like, I want a Tesla, I've got 120K in my IRA, I'll take 60 out, be good. Well, you're actually going to pay a lot higher than 15% capital gains. You're going to pay capital gains, plus you're going to pay the early penalty. So like each investment class has its own rules. You should probably know that if you're going to put money into those things.
So that would be the surprise. Anybody who bought Bitcoin and thought you could just cash that in, and if it was worth 50 grand now, you got 50 grand. It's like, no, 50 grand minus your capital gains.
Well, yeah, you'll get 50 grand for a moment, and then you'll
that's the surprise. If you just take the 50 and run, like, no, tuck a little bit out of the way, because IRS wants their chunk.
So before you go into the Tesla app on your phone and hit buy with Bitcoin, call your accountant first and ask how much this is really going to cost you.
Call your financial advisor. Do the freelancer trick. Any invoice, cut it in half.
Yeah,
that's what you get.
I literally take it. I do that. I like always. It's like, oh, look at this great check. Wah wah. As I like put aside half of it so that I know that I'm good when tax time comes.
Yep. Super easy rule of thumb. So if you need to buy a $60,000 Tesla, you need 120K worth of Bitcoin. Good luck.
So sticking with electric vehicle stuff, Jeep and Electrify America announced this week that they're partnering up. Back a few months ago when Jeep first announced the Wrangler 4xe plug-in hybrid, they said that they were going to install some EV chargers at the trailheads of some of the more popular places where people go off-roading with Jeeps, like in Moab and at the Rubicon Trail in California and a few other places. And now they've revealed more details about that now, since they're finally going to start actually shipping Wrangler 4xEs to customers in the next couple of weeks. They actually are partnering with Electrify America. So Electrify America is going to do the installation and operate the chargers, these trailhead chargers, and they'll be available, at these various locations. So if you have a Wrangler 4xe or any other, electric off-roader, you can, when you get to the trailhead, you can plug it in, charge it up. These are only going to be level 2 chargers, not DC fast chargers. But with something like the Wrangler, I think you can fill it up completely in like about an hour and a half or something like that. That way you can, with 20 plus miles of range, for electric range from this thing, you can basically traverse the entire trail without any emissions.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
This isn't like related to those monolith things that they found out in Arizona, right? That the Jeep quickly photoshopped their brand on.
Those actually, I believe, were actually prototype chargers. So
right. You looked on the back; there was a plug.
Yeah. If you feel around, you can find a little button to press, a little divot there. Press that, and then a door opens up, and you get your charge cable.
These are really cool chargers, though,
and they're going to be solar powered too.
Yeah.
They look really cool. The picture it looks really slick, and it is a giant advertising billboard for Jeep. Like if you didn't know Jeep existed, hey, now you do.
I suspect anybody heading out onto the Rubicon Trail probably knows the Jeep.
You think they're pretty cheap?
Even if they're driving a Land Rover Defender or
I still want to drive that 4xe too. I'm so sad that we didn't get to drive that earlier.
Yeah, I think they're going to be doing something pretty soon. I was just in touch with somebody from Jeep the other day. Oh yeah. And he said they're finally going to start shipping in the next couple of weeks to customers.
Oh, because they were going to do a drive in November or something. There was a media drive. Yeah. I want to say November. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it was November, and then the COVID. So we didn't get to do it after all, which made me sad because I really wanted to check this out. I love Jeep.
Yeah, I think everybody loves Jeeps, and electric Jeeps, I think, are going to be a thing.
Wait, Sam, do you love Jeeps?
If I'm going off road, then yeah, I absolutely love Jeeps.
Okay, because you're gonna have an issue. I'm okay with you not liking SUVs, but if you have hate for Jeep, then this is my first and last podcast.
I don't have hate for Jeep. I think that for every task you've got to use the right tool for the job. I don't go off road very often. I don't haul around 7 people. So SUVs are not the right tool for the jobs
fair.
that I require.
Fair.
If that's the job that you require of a vehicle, go for it.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I do
All
have
right.
to say, like, I love Jeeps. I would probably not own a Wrangler.
Why? Why would you not own a Wrangler?
Like, it's one of those things, like, I just get it out of my system every time I have one as a media loan. Like, they are exactly what they're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little rough, a little loud, and they're more refined than they've ever been. But they're just, they have that.
They're still very
demeanor.
much a Jeep.
They're
Yes.
exactly what they're supposed to be. After a little while, I am old and tired, and I just want it to be quiet.
I love them. When they first had the
You just want your Mach-E in whisper mode.
Right.
when the Gladiator first came out, I took it all the way from Nashua up to Montreal, and for like all approved, like I had paper, take it over the border. Here you go. That was a long drive, and I loved that thing. Like I just we had the little panes off the, so the top's all open. I could have just kept driving that further into Canada and driving. I just loved
they have charm for sure,
Yeah.
and
The Gladiator Mojave's great. I love that
it's
thing.
fantastic. Yeah.
So I'm not anti-Jeep. I think that my disposition, I am the noise maker, not necessarily the noise receiver in my reality. So
And then anti-Jeep, I'm pro Jeep. I love Jeep. My mom had, I can't wait for the new Grand Wagoneer. My mom had a Grand Wagoneer back in 1982 or something with like the genuine faux wood paneling on the side.
yeah.
And I loved that thing. You could fit a small army of your high school friends into that thing, just saying. So
That's that is going to be the thing that we're going to, the aftermarket thing that we're going to be seeing this fall is, various kinds of wood kits for the new Wagoneers.
you have to, and I guess they said they didn't do it because they felt like, well, that was of a moment and that's not where we are now. And I'm like, but if you've done some little throwback, made that available, there's a lot of people that would have slapped wood paneling.
I think they want to see what the aftermarket's going to do at first. They'll say, we'll let the aftermarket handle that. And if it really becomes exceedingly popular, they'll officially sanction one. It's a good way to boost sales.
They'll offer something through Mopar eventually.
It'll be a Mopar thing. Yeah. It'll be an official Mopar enhancement. Yeah. I hope.
Speaking of wood paneling, have you ever seen Frank Marcus's K car?
No.
He's got.
I mean, I know there were wood paneled K cars like the Town and Country.
He and his husband have an '84. I think it was Town and Country wagon. So the Chrysler, the fancier version, Town and Country wagon with woody side panels and the turbo 2.2 liter 4-cylinder in there.
Yeah,
that's a great vehicle.
That's awesome.
It's a great
I don't know why I like of all the things that were like of a time that are not definitely 2021, the wood paneling on cars. I don't know why I see old cars and I'm like, I love it. I know it's kind of weirdly tacky and half the time it's sort of peeling off. I love it.
It's so funny too, because like our nostalgia for it is like, we have the nostalgia for the nostalgia of the time that was nostalgic about the wood bodied station wagons of the 30s and 40s.
So I'm nostalgic
when they actually had
100
wood
years ago.
Yeah. You're like, well, you're nostalgic for someone else's nostalgia.
Okay. Yeah, I am. Dang it. Yes.
Which is fine.
Nested nostalgia.
Right. Little Matryoshka dolls.
Show title.
Yeah.
Rivian also announced this week, or maybe it was last week, that they are building out their own charging network, much as Tesla has done. They call it the Rivian Adventure Network, which I have no complaints about that. It's like automakers, if they want to go out there and install chargers, to get more infrastructure out there so more people will buy EVs, all for that. My complaint with what Rivian is doing is, they're building a network. They plan to have by 2023, 3,500 DC fast chargers at 600 locations. So 600 stations with 3,500 chargers by the end of 2023. They're using the CCS chargers, which is the same as what you have, from everybody that isn't Tesla. So it's a standard charger, but these are going to be exclusive to Rivian owners. Anybody else driving any other EV with a CCS charger will not be allowed to use these, which I think is stupid.
But you say there's another note in there, though. It says they're installing 10,000 around the country that won't be tied to the Rivian network.
Yeah, those are going to be level 2 chargers. So just the slower AC chargers, like 6.6.
To toss everyone else a bone, like here.
Yeah, but I'd rather see all of them be accessible to everybody. I mean, I certainly don't expect Rivian or Tesla or anybody else to give free charging to people who buy a Ford or a Volkswagen or a GM EV.
It's not their job.
Expensive.
It's not their job to become the charging infrastructure company for the entire EV owner.
Well, and to give away free electricity. I mean, it costs. I'm well aware of how much it costs to install these things. I mean, it's a couple $100,000 to install a DC fast charger, a single one, and you've got to have enough electrical capacity and everything coming in. It's a costly endeavor, but I think that one way to make your money back on that is to open it up to everybody, to allow everybody to use these things, and charge them for it, just like they charge for gas.
It says they're going to charge their own owners for this. The company didn't release info on how much owners will have to pay, so it'll be Rivian only, but you're not going to get free charging at all.
Yeah, I'm sure that, like most other automakers, they'll, when you buy the vehicle, you'll get some amount of free charging. Yeah. But, just the restricting it only to their own customers, I think is a fundamentally bad idea.
I agree with that. I mean, I think that if you're looking at building a business, it seems like a potential revenue stream. I also think you have to balance it by making your customers of your special thing feel like they are special. There's a middle ground there.
I mean, give Rivian owners, discounted pricing, charge extra for non-Rivians, but I mean, there's ways to do it, but I just don't think that, if what you're trying to do is expand the marketplace for EVs and get more people to adopt EVs, with one of the things, my company, one of the reports that we publish is an annual consumer survey, consumer profiles for EVs, and 2 of the 3 biggest barriers to entry for EVs are range, access to charging, and cost. The range and access to charging, go hand in hand. And if you don't have access to charging, you're not going to buy an EV. Make it as easy as possible for people to buy an EV, and more people will buy them.
This just gives you a reason to get a Rivian. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't help the overall EV market, although maybe it does. I mean, even if you can convince someone to buy a Rivian over a gas engine, you've at least gotten someone in the door with EVs who know if they get another Rivian next time, maybe now that once they're into EVs, they'll say, oh, well, this time I'll buy a Mach-E or a Tesla or a Bolt or whatever else instead. It does get a person in the door, but just for their brand.
Yeah.
I would love for them to get to the point where they have to worry about conquests. And I guess there's a little bit of that. People are very brand loyal. Mm-hmm. Rivian's making a great case for itself already. Their trucks look really cool. They have a great team. I think they continue to build out their team, and they're not moving too fast where they become sloppy. That whole move fast and break things ethos from software can hurt you if you try to apply it to automaking
or hurt other people on the road.
People. It feels like a misstep, but maybe there's some other strategy behind it that we're just.
We'll see what happens once the Rivians are out there and they have their customers, and see how long it stays Rivian only, or if at some point they say, okay, now we're gonna change this up.
Yeah. I mean, really, the charging experience is going to be key, and that's still one of the best things about Tesla ownership is the charging experience is on point. It's generally just better than anybody else so far. And so I could see if Rivian wants to do that, where they want to make sure that you have a great charging experience with their product. I can see that.
And it's funny, the Tesla chargers up here, because we get snow. So many of the Tesla charging stations, they're always cleared because of how they're located. So like the superchargers, you can always get to them. There's never a problem, even when there's snow. Some of the other spots where there are literal chargers, like guys don't even know what they are. And there's like snow all packed up, and you can't even get to it to charge it. But you don't see that at the superchargers because they're always this super well marked giant bank, and everybody knows what they are. So the access thing, even in the winter, you can always find yourself a supercharger at the supercharger network, but you can't necessarily get to the same EV charging station for somebody else that you've been using all year because now some plow guy didn't catch that those two little poles were important, and he's buried them in 8 feet of snow.
Right. Yeah. And they're like behind a fence that sometimes is locked. Yeah. It's all.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, that's another complaint I have about chargers. Like, good luck, half the time finding the physical charger. You've got a map, it shows you, oh, there's a charging station here, at this mall. But, then you end up driving around for half an hour trying to actually find the physical charger.
I mean, luckily
there's never
there's
any
not
signs.
Luckily, there's not anything else at malls these days. So.
Oh, that's true. But gas stations, you see the signs everywhere. For a gas station, you have a biggest sign, Shell station, or BP, or whatever.
Yeah, you can see.
There's
from
never
the
any signs. There's never any signs on these chargers, so you have no idea that they're there.
Right, they're hard to find, and like when you have Tesla superchargers, it's normally a bank of them. And they're so, you see them out of the corner. And when they're at a gas station, you cannot miss them, lined up on the side of like the rest areas and stuff in New Hampshire have them. It's this huge bank of them. You could not miss that those are Tesla charging stations right there. They're never hidden. They're always very easy to find. Like you have a sign on the, on the side of the highway, like a BP. But still, if you knew that they were there, when you get off the road, you're going to have no problem finding that.
Let's do some listener mails.
All right, listener mail. We did like a little music intro for this. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Well,
ask someone to do it. Ask the listener to do it. Have come with a little musical intro.
That's good. Yes, listeners, send in your musical interludes.
Royalty free, please.
Yes, royalty free. We'll give you what is it? Share alike. We'll tell people who did it.
Don't we have loot? We need to send somebody some silly automotive OEM loot.
That's something on our to-do list.
We have a longer to-do list. We've talked about doing things. And
I'll send you a couple of flash drives with automaker logos on them.
And every episode of the show. Listen, I've got a to-do list that I'm going to get through in the next couple of weeks. I'll have time, so it's fine.
Okay.
Sure.
So first up, Sean Whitehurst. Good morning, WB hosts. I just listened to your episode with a healthy discussion on Super Cruise on the Bolt EUV. Earlier this week, a legendary member of the St. Louis Blues organization died in a car accident. It happened to be a Cadillac, which got me thinking. The autopsy revealed no fatal organ damage from the accident, instead listing cause of death as a cardiac incident. I know some autonomous systems take actions when a driver is not providing input. Do any systems stop the vehicle? Fortunately, this accident resulted in a glancing blow to a minivan with minor injuries and then an impact with a barrier. Are any companies openly discussing measures their systems could take during a medical emergency? Even stopping in a lane of travel on a highway may be safer than the vehicle continuing with an incapacitated driver. I'm just curious about these outlier situations in autonomous design. So the answer is yes. Cadillac or GM does this with Super Cruise. They've got the infrared driver monitor system that's looking at the driver to make sure you're watching the road when you're using Super Cruise. And if you are not paying attention or if you become non-responsive, the system will and it'll alert you first. If you don't take the wheel, if you don't take over control, it will start slowing the vehicle down. When it gets to 40 miles an hour, it turns on the hazard warning lights. If you're still non-responsive, it will bring the vehicle to a complete stop. And if you still don't respond, if there's indications that you are, incapacitated in any way, it will in fact use the OnStar system to call for emergency services. It'll speak to you through the speakers first and say, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need help?" If you don't respond within a minute or two, it will call for help. And GM, I think, is the only one right now that's doing the call for help part of it. I expect others will. I suspect Ford will be doing this when they launch their active drive assist this summer, and also Nissan when they launch the Aria at the end of the year with their ProPilot version 2. But even ProPilot, the current generation ProPilot, if it thinks that your hands are not on the wheel, if you don't respond when it alerts you, it will slow the car down and bring it to a stop. And most other systems like this will do this. Even Tesla's eventually, if it thinks your hands are not on the wheel, will slow the car down and bring it to a stop.
If it doesn't plow into something first. I'm sorry.
In the case of a Tesla, it may take many minutes to do that, depending on where you are and the road conditions, but it will eventually stop. It doesn't call for help, but it will eventually stop the car.
I tried it out in the Nissan, the ProPilot Assist in their current gen, and we're driving, like, okay, let's see. And it it aggressively lets you know. It's like,
oh yeah,
it's like listening to like the red alert in Star Trek at a certain point. You're like, woo, woo, woo. Like, okay, put my hands on the wheel. But so there's no way that if you miss that you should have been paying attention that you couldn't. So if you were incapacitated and that wouldn't wake you up, that would wake you up from anything. So you would have to really be incapacitated and then bring you to a stop, nice and straight line.
That calling for help part is something that's been part of OnStar for a long time. It almost goes all the way back to the original OnStar implementation.
That was an original feature.
Yeah.
When if the airbags went off in a crash, it would automatically call 911.
Which is like, that's great. And I think that combining that with the ability of the car to actually get over to, safely stop means that they don't have to wait for the airbag warning, to deploy. You don't have to wait until you've hit something. So I think it's a safety improvement.
OnStar has always been so good with that. Like I did a thing years ago where they took us to their little OnStar call center and you got to experience what they did and hear the stories. It's kind of amazing. It's always one of those things like, I think it gets underrated for just how much that can help you if something goes horribly wrong in your car. So it doesn't surprise me that they're one of the first ones to say, okay, and also we will call for help if our, Super Cruise decides that you're somehow in trouble and need help.
I mean, they invented the sort of telematics for the consumer like that. As like a
they were the first in 1996.
Where is their like network operations center, their call center? It's like in like South Dakota,
I don't know
right?
all their call centers, but there is a big network right in the Rensen downtown in Detroit.
Oh, okay.
Where there's like a cave, but that building is so huge. Like you go downstairs and there's an OnStar logo and a Batman bat signal.
Awesome.
And they're honestly, somewhere I have a picture and they're doing like development stuff, but then they can take you up to where they have, you can see the screens and it literally shows you how they can see that we're getting a lot of calls here. We're getting a lot of calls there. They can see, like, it's so cool. They can see, say there was an issue. I don't know, there was a flood, there was a hurricane, there was an earthquake. They can see the sudden influx of OnStar calls and open things up so that they know, like, we have a problem here. It's an unbelievably sophisticated and interesting system to watch and to talk to the people who answer the calls, whether it's just the, hey, how do I get to the nearest Chick-fil-A, or help, my husband's having a heart attack. It's amazing what that system is capable of handling.
That's cool.
Yeah, and they've responded to, I want to say it's more than 100,000 crashes. Sent out first responders with 100,000 crashes over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
So it's used a lot. And then also just for general help and assistance. So what we're going to see going forward in the next few years is a lot more cars equipped with these types of driver monitor systems that are looking to see if you're alert. And one of the advantages to this is it can detect just in general distracted driving or if you're impaired. Or if you're having a medical issue, or drowsiness, because it's looking for your eyes and your head pose, and when it does that, then it can it can respond and either try to alert you to see if you are actually ill or injured, or just to get you back on track, hopefully.
Yeah, and I tend to have that skeptical approach to autonomy and self-driving cars as a thing. Like, I don't think we're ever going to get there to full self-driving, but maybe I'll be surprised. But I think this is a really good use case for autonomous systems and automation.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense, and it helps avoid crashes that would otherwise be worse. Even just that glancing blow that he talks about, like, it sucks that there was another car involved, but if there was a way to, make it just be that bad versus like hitting something, much more violently, that's a good reason to have all that stuff.
Yep. All right. Next up, Ged Hemingway. Hey guys, I guess I can now say that without gender neutral preface, since Rebecca has left. Ged,
well,
you missed your opportunity. If you'd sent this email in last week, you would have been okay.
But I think guys is like a
I'm okay with guys.
Yeah,
hey guys, like that's encompassing enough for me. I got it.
Hello, fellows.
We're not easily offended here.
No.
She will be missed, as she brought a perspective that was opposite what I focus on, and that's a good thing. And hopefully, I think Nicole will bring some of that to us as well. electrification is the obvious future, and right now infrastructure is a big obstacle, which we were just talking about. There's been some action in the long-haul industry with developing electric rigs, but then in the consumer market, trucks with some nice towing numbers. I currently have a 2015 Chevy Volt and love the electric side of it for running around town. In the year of ownership, I've gassed it up maybe twice. However, for anything long haul, I take my 2017 Nissan Titan XD diesel. I have a 36-foot travel trailer, which we take trips with, and I can't imagine attempting anything outside of battery range, which will be significantly reduced while towing. I get range anxiety enough from a diesel on cross-country trips. Trying to find a station I can pull into and more significantly out of proper intervals is hard enough with an established infrastructure, and you can sure as heck can't pull that into a charging station where that currently an option. What chatter have you guys heard for this side of electrification? I'd like my next vehicle, which is still 4 to 5 years off, to be a full electric truck, but I can't do that if I can't do the one thing a truck was built for, and that's tow. Side note, I've never really looked at what you guys look like until listening for about 2 years, and it's comical to me that my mental image of your voices essentially had Sam's voice and Dan's body and vice versa. Love the show. Keep up the good work.
I think that's an upgrade. Sam, you have a deeper voice than I do, so that's good. Yeah, I think your interim step is going to be a hybrid, like a hybrid F-Series.
Well, no, I mean, we've got full electric trucks coming. Rivian's launching later this year.
Yeah.
Lordstown Motors claims they're going to be launching this year, but they're not selling to consumers anyway, and don't expect them to ever really arrive. But GM is launching the Hummer EV this year, and there's going to be more conventional type electric pickups from GM probably within the next year. I think we'll see a Chevy electric pickup. Ford's launching the F-150 electric next year. There's the Cybertruck.
Come on.
Technically, he's right. I mean, it's supposedly.
Yeah. So there are electric pickups coming, but he's right though. I think this is a real challenge. I mean, what you were just talking about, Nicole, with the plow drivers, plowing the snow on top of the chargers. Right. It's hard enough with a car, or a smaller vehicle. If you're towing something with a truck, that's the operators of these charging stations really need to start looking at how to change the configuration of these vehicles, because I know Dan Edmonds, he did several tests a couple of years back when the Model X first came out, doing some towing tests and trying to charge that thing up on a road trip while towing a trailer was really, really hard, because most of these charging stations are designed to pull straight in or back in bays, because you're sitting there for a while. They're not set up like gas stations where you drive in, drive out. And I think companies like Electrify America and ChargePoint and EVgo and Blink and others really need to start doing this. And I'm going to be really curious to see how Rivian does this. We just talked about Rivian, but how they do this with their charging stations. With what are they? Are they going to arrange them in a way that you can do that drive in, drive out? Because right now there really aren't any stations like that.
I think it's part of, EVs are still in the process of being accepted by the public. There's a lot of people who won't even consider one yet. Most of what most people are considering this point are vehicles that are just drive in, drive out is fine. Most people aren't considering towing with them. Like, I think that's still, I know it'll happen. I know realistically you can, but I think that's not where most of the EV using public is right now. And I don't know if they're going to be there for a little while yet. I think this guy is like kind of a nice exception, that he's like, I want to be able to tow with mine, but am I going to be able to do it? I think for smaller towing jobs, and more like local, like you're going camping a couple hours outside of your house, not going on a major road trip, towing a 36-foot trailer or something. I think it's just because the public isn't there yet. And they're just trying to get, okay, let's get the people who are most likely to adopt. The people who are most likely to adopt right now, they're driving cars. They're not worrying about a truck they can tow with. So it's almost like it feels like a phase 2 thing, that they'll actually make the chargers work for that. I
wonder if some of it too is a blind spot from the folks that developed the current EV landscape. Now that we've got automakers getting in there and really applying it to trucks, they're going to understand truck uses and they'll figure out how to apply that, and how to make it work, and what changes to make. Because I think that EVs, they've gotten their rise from folks outside of the automotive industry with sort of a narrow perspective. You look at who's at the top of those companies and sort of driving product decisions. There's not as many like automaker veterans getting them to this point. Now they're starting to bring in automaker veterans, and my point is kind of going off the rails here a little bit, but like, I just think that, as you have them EV trucks integrated into your normal product development cycle, they're going to have to figure out all of those things. How does it work? Car makers do this. Like, how does it work at the gas pump? How does, all of this stuff, like, how convenient is it? What's it like to use? What changes can we make? How can we partner with industry in certain places to make it a little easier? We can both sort of, get some sort of shine from a new development. So that's going to come as they develop the trucks for market. I guess where I was going with, like, you're probably going to want to wait a few years before you do an electric truck, is like the ones that are going to come to market tend to be like really premium, like the Hummer. I know that it's a truck, but it's kind of like, that's a super premium bauble. Like, I don't expect any of those to ever be used like a truck, I guess, is like my thought. And the Rivian, it's supposed to get here. But I'm doing my skeptic bit, I suppose, which I know is a shock.
Rivian's going to get here because they've done a lot of stuff with their truck. Their truck is, it's out there running light. Emmy Hall took it.
They're doing pilot.
They're out there.
They're doing pilot production now with those. And it's premium. I mean, it starts at $67,000. Before the tax breaks.
Like, that's not ridiculous for a truck. Like, that's true.
Oh.
And GM. GM is going to launch, something, much more conventional, than the Hummer, more conventional pickup than the Hummer, probably in 2022. And Ford's, doing the F-150, which is, much more conventional, very conventional truck. So they'll be there, within the next 18 months. We will have a bunch of electric pickup trucks on the road.
Okay. That's sooner than I expected, but again,
but towing is going to be a challenge because, when you attach a trailer to an electric vehicle, you can count on cutting the range in half. Generally, is the rule of thumb. And so, if you've got 300 miles of range, you're looking at stopping to charge every 150 miles, at a minimum. Which is
why people aren't really doing it. That's why I feel like it's almost too early or something. Like, we just aren't at a point where we can realistically tow solid stuff, really tow.
At least long distances.
Right. I think that's the difference, right? Is like, can you tow cross country, or can you tow, within a 20-mile radius or something? Yeah.
Like, I think they work if you're just towing a short distance, like that weekend trip, day trip situation. But if you're towing every day and you're towing something heavy, or you really want to go on a long distance, I don't think they're there yet. I don't know when they'll be there. And so that's why the Chargers, I don't think, are matching up with it. Well, because that kind of driving doesn't happen for them just yet.
They may not be there for quite a while. I mean, it's a good idea, I think, to look at what's going on the heavy truck side and see, like, we're definitely going to see electric, what is it, class 8 or electric box trucks and stuff, semis. You're going to see those for intercity and intracity use a lot sooner than you're going to see cross country, just because like the batteries are just not there. The charging is not there. And if you're going to make charging on that at all quick enough, that's going to be really, really hard on the hardware, on the batteries themselves. And so there's a lot to get to that point.
For long haul trucks, you're looking at megawatt, 1 to 1.5 megawatt charging rates. Whereas today the fastest chargers out there, are the Electrify America stuff, 350 kilowatts.
Yeah.
And the Porsche Taycan's the first one that can use that. They charge at 270 kilowatts. The Lucid Air coming out later this year is going to do 350. And there's others that are going to be coming out doing that 300 to 350 kilowatts. But we're talking 3 to 6 times that much with these long haul trucks. And that's technology that's still in development. It doesn't exist today.
It'll get there. They'll eventually figure it out. Or like
it will. It's just when.
No, it will. Yeah. I mean, it's still several years off.
Yeah, it's just too far off. Like it'll get there, but I don't know if it'll get there before this guy needs to buy a truck.
Well, so if he needs to buy a truck and he wants to cross country tow, I still think that like you're going to have hybrid options, which will get you better fuel economy, and they'll tow across the country no problem, and they'll probably do some plug-in too, so you get an X amount of range, electric only before you have to run the gas engine.
There's the F-150 hybrid. There's a new Tundra coming later this year, which will probably have a hybrid option at some point. So yeah, those are viable options.
What's he driving now? The Titan XD?
Yeah, Titan XD diesel.
Yeah, so that's a pretty like that's halfway between like a 1500 and a heavy duty, right? Like that's
kind of sort of
yeah. So that's going to be his keys, just to sort of match up capability.
All right, Travis writes, I'm looking for thoughts on elderly SUVs. I have a 2003 4Runner with 235,000 miles that is my third backup beater. It's a solid driver and hasn't given me any trouble other than a minor oil leak. We inherited my father-in-law's 2001 Suburban with 230,000 miles. The Suburban looks fresh off the showroom floor, while the 4Runner has seen better days. Which should I keep as a people hauler, flood, Home Depot ox? I live in Houston, so flooding is always a concern and snow isn't. 4Runner is all original, but recently redid the suspension and brakes. It's rust-free, and the paint is completely faded, and it's just the V6, yet I'm lucky to do better than 14 miles per gallon. The Suburban, on the other hand, is a rebuilt 5.3-liter V8, new transmission, and looks nearly brand new. It gets similar gas mileage, doesn't ask for premium in the manual, and has much more comfortable ride, but the 4Runner looks cooler. My friends are evenly split on what to do, so I need adult advice. Well, you've come to the wrong place for that.
You're out of luck.
His daily drivers are a Kia Soul for his wife and a Chevy Cruze for him. And my wife said no to keeping both and or selling one of our dailies.
His wife is smart.
Yeah. So you got to choose between a 2003 4Runner or a 2001 Suburban. What do you choose?
I think you put the 2003 4Runner on one of the auction sites that drives up the prices.
Bring a trailer.
Yeah. Because the 4Runner, even with ratty paint, like the 4Runner has a little bit more affinity for buyers. I mean, a really nice looking Suburban though. That's
So he just I'm following. He has to keep one. He has to sell one. Is that where we are?
Yep.
Does he need the cash for it, or is his wife just like get this car?
His wife is saying one of the SUVs must go.
Well, I think his wife is looking at a driveway full of like 5 vehicles. Like
cars.
This is nonsense. Like get rid of these.
I keep the 4Runner just because I like it better. I don't know.
Oh, we're split. Sam, you gonna break the tie?
If you're looking for money, I would say sell the 4Runner because it'll probably get you more cash. But if you're like, which one would I keep just to keep and like get rid of one? I keep the 4Runner.
I think that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. You're definitely, I think there's a fan base out there for stuff like the 4Runner that, post that up on Bring a Trailer and you will probably get way more than you expected for it. Mm-hmm. Especially if you take some good photos of it. But, I mean, that Suburban, will probably easily run another 200,000-300,000 miles, with regular maintenance.
Well, I mean, but so will the 4Runners. See, that's the thing. Like, that's what I'm trying to get past. Is like, well, practically, the 4Runner is going to be worth more to sell. They're both going to require.
Although Suburbans, have good resale value too.
Okay, so here's the thing: which one rusts more? I've seen Suburbans. That's a GMT 800.
Yeah.
2001. So those lose their rockers. All the time. They're otherwise
this one, he says it looks brand new. It looks like it's fresh off the showroom floor, even though it's 20 years old.
Yeah. That's a hard one. Maybe post them both and then just don't sell the one that doesn't bring them money. I don't know.
Post them both with it.
The 4Runner is going to get more money. I bet if you posted them both, the 4Runner is going to get him more cash.
I think so too.
I agree with that. So if you need to sell one and you need the money,
or you just want to get the most money, for it.
Yeah, the 4Runner.
The emotional choice, I think the 4Runner is probably more fun. And it's definitely, it also sounds like it's more of like a beater class car too, with the way it looks versus the Suburban that looks super cushy and nice. So I don't know. The 4Runner is going to be like, they just have that reputation. They're like reliable and they do all the off-road stuff. So there's more people who are going to go bidding for that versus the Suburban, which is giant. And I love giant SUVs and they're very useful. So I'd keep the Suburban.
That is another thing to consider, is like where you're going to drive it. And he's using it, for hauling stuff around. So that extra space in the Suburban may be useful to him, but the size, may be a challenge just in terms of maneuverability. So
yeah, when he's in Houston, so I don't think the size is a problem.
There's lots of space in Houston.
Tell us what you did.
All right. I think we should probably call it there.
It's lunchtime.
Running on
12:01.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us, Nicole.
Thank you. I'm glad to be a part of this.
Are you going to come back next week, or have we scared you?
I'm going to come back next week.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Wheel Bearings. Hey, we love to listen to our listeners, too. Drop us an email to feedback@wheelbearings.media with your thoughts, questions, or conversation starters. That's feedback@wheelbearings.media. You can also find us on Twitter @wheelbearingscast. Don't use any vowels except for the A in cast. So that's WHLBRNGS cast. Thanks again. We hope to hear from you soon.